Your ability to engage in deliberate focused alertness is in direct proportion to how well you are sleeping on a regular basis. I think that's kind of an obvious one. So get your sleep handled. But once that's in place, the question then is, how do I access this alertness? Well, there are a number of ways. Some people use some pretty elaborate psychological gymnastics. They will tell people that they're going to do something and create some accountability. That could be really good. Or they'll post a picture of themselves online and they'll commit to losing a certain amount of weight or something like this. So they can use either shame-based practices to potentially embarrass themselves if they don't follow through. They'll write checks to organizations that they hate and insist that they'll cash them if they don't actually follow through. Or they'll do it out of love. They'll decide that they're going to run a marathon or learn a language or something because of somebody they love, or they want to devote it to somebody. The truth is that from the standpoint of epinephrine and getting alert and activated, it doesn't really matter. Epinephrine is a chemical, and your brain does not distinguish between doing things out of love or hate, anger or fear. It really doesn't. All of those promote autonomic arousal and the release of epinephrine. So I think for most people, if you're feeling not motivated to make these changes, the key thing is to identify not just one, but probably a kit of reasons, several reasons as to why you would want to make this particular change. And being drawn toward a particular goal that you're excited about can be one. Also, being motivated to not be completely afraid, ashamed, or humiliated for not following through on a goal is another. Just want to briefly mention one little aside there, because I've got a friend who's a physician. He's a cardiologist who has a really interesting theory. This is just theory, but I think it will resonate with a lot of people, which is that you've all heard of this molecule dopamine that gives us this sense of reward when we accomplish something. Well, we also want to be able to access dopamine while we're working towards things, enjoy the process, as they say, because it has all sorts of positive effects. It gives us energy, etc. But my friend, what he says is, there's many instances where someone will come to him and say, you know what, I'm going to write a book. And he says, oh, that's great. I'm sure the book's going to be terrific and you really should write a book. And then they never go do it. And his theory is, if you get so much dopamine from the reward of people saying, oh yeah, you're absolutely going to be able to do that, you might not actually go after the reward of the accomplishment itself. So beware these positive reinforcements also. I'm not saying people should flagellate themselves to the point of victory in whatever they're pursuing, but motivation is a tricky one. So I suggest that everyone ask themselves, what is it that I want to accomplish? And what is it that's driving me to accomplish this? And come up with 2 or 3 things, fear-based perhaps, love-based perhaps, or perhaps several of those, in order to ensure alertness, energy, and attention for the task. And that brings us to the attention part. Now, it's one thing to have an electrode embedded into your brain and increase the amount of acetylcholine. It's another to exist in the real world outside the laboratory and have trouble focusing, having trouble bringing your attention to a particular location in space for a particular event. And there's a lot of discussion nowadays about smartphones and devices creating a sort of attention deficit, almost at a clinical level for many people, including adults. I think that's largely true. And what it means, however, is that we all are responsible for learning how to create depth of focus. There are some important neuroscience principles to get depth of focus. I want to briefly talk about the pharmacology first, because I always get asked about this. People say, what can I take to increase my levels of acetylcholine? Well, there are things you can take. Nicotine is called nicotine because acetylcholine binds to the nicotinic receptor. There are 2 kinds of acetylcholine receptors, muscarinic and nicotinic, but the nicotinic ones are involved in attention and alertness. I have colleagues. These are not my, kind of like bro science buddies. I have those friends too. This is a Nobel Prize winning colleague who chews Nicorette while he works. He used to be a smoker. He quit smoking because of fear of lung cancer. It's a very smart choice. But he missed the level of focus that he could bring to his work. This is somebody who's had a very long career, and if you ever meet with him, unfortunately I can't name him, if you ever meet with him, what you'll realize is he chews about 5 pieces of Nicorette an hour, which I am not suggesting people do. But when I asked him, why are you doing this? He said, well, it increases my alertness and focus. And also his theory, and I want to really underscore that it's theory, not scientifically supported yet, is that it offsets Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. It is true that nucleus basalis is the primary site of degeneration in the brain in people that have dementia and Parkinson's, and it's what leads to a lot of their inability to focus their attention, not just deficits in plasticity. So he might be onto something. Now, I've tried chewing Nicorette. It makes me super jittery. I don't like it because I can't focus very well. It kind of takes me too far up the level of autonomic arousal. I've got friends that dip Nicorette all day, some of whom are scientists. Writers and artists and musicians are familiar with the effects of nicotine from the era where a lot of people smoked, and fortunately fewer people smoke now. So if you're interested in the pharmacology, there are supplements and things that can increase cholinergic transmission in the brain. I'm not suggesting you do this, but if you're going to go down that route, you want to be very careful how much you rely on those all the time, because the essence of plasticity is to create a window of attention and focus that's distinct from the rest of your day. That's what's going to create a mark in your brain and the potential for plasticity.